Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 7 of In the 11. Today's podcast I'm excited for is going to be me telling you guys the story of when I was over in Germany, some of the trials that I went on with different clubs all around the country, really. So this is one that I'm excited for. There's definitely some good stories, some good adventures here that I'm going to lay out for you, and I hope that you guys enjoy it. Let's get rolling. Before I get started here, let me just kind of update you on what the plan is, I guess you could say, for the podcast right now. As for those of you who have been following, in the beginning we were kind of doing one episode every week, and then these past couple weeks we've kind of switched up a little bit, and we've done, the last episode was now 2 weeks ago where I had the first guest on with my mom, and I think for right now that's kind of the groove that I think is going to work best for providing good content at a consistent basis, but also not inundating you all with a lot every week. And this is something that I might still go back to, one episode every week. Just, it's me trying to figure out, trying to test some things out and see what works the best. So for right now, as you guys obviously know, this episode has come out 2 weeks post episode 6, and also let me just say thank you for those of you who reached out about episode 6. A lot of people really enjoyed the conversation that I had with my mom, where we sat down and went over my story and talked about her thoughts and feelings on some of the decisions that I've made, and she gave some advice for other parents out there who may have a child who has gone through some of the same things that I have, or maybe has aspirations to do some of the same things that I'm trying to do right now. So a lot of you guys said that it was cool to have a different perspective, and that she really added something to the podcast. So for those of you who reached out, thank you, I appreciate that, and hopefully you won't mind too much if it's just back to old me for this episode. But without further ado, let me just, for those of you who are new, this is maybe the first episode that you've ever caught of my podcast. Last year, I was playing soccer overseas in Germany, and I was playing for a club where most of the games that I was getting minutes in was with the club's second team, which was at a pretty low level in terms of the soccer pyramid in Germany. And I quickly kind of realized that I needed to do something to try and find a higher level of play where I could truly challenge myself and develop as a player and further my career. So what I did was, for the most part, I put together a highlight tape and then sent out a little kind of blurb email to numerous clubs around the area and even into some other regions in Germany as well, trying to get trials, trying to get an opportunity for me to come in and train with teams, and really it worked in 2 respects. In one, I could kind of do some data mining and really figure out what it was that my level was in terms of German soccer. Can I kind of gauge where exactly I fit in, in terms of this pyramid, and what level should I really be trying to play at? And then also, too, can I have other teams take a look at me and possibly find a next opportunity, a next team for me to come play for, and maybe, work a little bit closer towards a big contract. So, as I said in previous episodes, probably sent hundreds of emails out to a variety of clubs, and I pretty much focused in the, I would say, probably 5th to 8th division level in terms of teams. I was, as I said, playing at a pretty low level, and so I was playing at a pretty low level. So for those of you who maybe are wondering how something like this might work, or at least what my mindset was and thought process was about trying to climb the ladder, was, if I was starting on rung 10 or 12, what have you, it'd be very difficult for me as a player to make that jump into a fully professional team without having high-level semi-professional experience on my resume. And so for that, what that meant was I needed to try and find a team, as I said, in maybe 5th, 6th, 7th division, where I could come, play higher level games, prove that I can play at that level, and then hopefully use that to make another step even farther. Everything in professional soccer is just trying to climb a little bit higher, a little bit higher. Can you use a step to propel you into a next level or a higher division? And what oftentimes is difficult for some people, and why players face roadblocks, is they think sometimes that it's just going to happen where they'll be playing at a low level, they'll get an opportunity and be able to jump 6, 7, 8 steps. And unfortunately, it just doesn't work like that. It oftentimes is, you need to prove yourself at each level as you climb a little bit higher. So to, I guess, put it into a different set of terms, is many players who are in college believe that as soon as they graduate college, they should have an opportunity to jump right into the professional game. And based upon your level, you may have that. But more often than not, what you'll need to do is go and prove yourself at a high semi-professional level in order to then have that block on your CV or your resume, that period of time where you are right on the cusp of a professional and you prove yourself and you prove that you are a good player at that level. You need that in order to then make that last jump into the professional game, to maybe get a trial with a pro club or to even get a contract with a pro club. And a lot of players, myself kind of included, didn't understand that college soccer is great for what it is, but it is not as high of a level, at least in terms of what the global soccer community perceives it to be, as we as the players really think that it is. And to be fair, it makes sense, right? When I go and I'm trialing for these clubs, even though they may be 5th, 6th, 7th division, where the players are amateur or semi-professional and they work other full-time jobs oftentimes during the week, and then they'll come train at night, that type of thing, their season runs in conjunction or parallel to what a professional season would look like. Oftentimes it's 9 to 10 months, it's consistent training, and it's a plethora of games spread out over a normal season's length. Whereas in a college season, you're going to get maybe 20 games, and it's going to be jam-packed into 3 months where you're also training every day, but then the rest of the year is completely different. And that's why the American system is just so different to the European system, or really the global soccer system, and why I say you need to have those steps in between, right? You need to make those next rungs on the ladder. For the majority of college soccer players coming out is not college soccer directly into the pro game. Oftentimes it's college soccer, semi-professional soccer, then professional soccer. So I know I'm digressing a little bit here, but I just want to lay that out even more so and kind of expand upon what I've spoken about in previous podcasts about why I'm doing things the way that I'm doing, and why I think it's important for specifically American players to just understand what it's really like and what you need to maybe try and do if you want to try and play professionally, and as soon as you graduate you don't have that opportunity right away. So with that being said, I'm in Germany and I've emailed lots and lots of clubs, and I'm starting to get some responses back. And the very first club that I got a response back from and we coordinated me coming in for a trial was a club called FSG Riedrode, and it was in the same area. So I was living in Darmstadt, and it was in the Darmstadt Gruppenliga, which is the 7th division, and it was honestly a really great experience for what my first ever trial really was like in another country. You know, it's all it's all easy and it's all kind of still safe when you're just sending the emails. There's no real pressure on you there. You're just sending out emails and trying to get responses back. But now it's time to actually go out and make the trial happen and try and make something of all this work that you put in with these emails. So I finally coordinate, as I said, with this club. They say, yep, why don't you come down and you train with us? So I go to training with my club in the morning, and then I was researching all day, okay, how am I going to get there? I need to take public transportation, and I need to take 3 total trains to get there. And that's what's great about Germany is the public transportation system. You can really get anywhere in the country with buses or trains or a combination of both, and most places for really not too expensive. So this is my first experience ever really venturing out and trying to get to a different location using public transportation. I had used the public transportation in and around the smaller city where I was living, but that was typically I was taking the exact same 1 or 2 trams or trains whenever I needed to, and it was just kind of hopping into town if I needed something or something along those lines. It wasn't too complicated or complex to figure out. So I map out all the trains that I need to get on, and I get the euros ready that I need to pay for it, and I go. And the thing about public transportation, which is true in many other places around the world, is oftentimes it's very hit or miss as to whether or not your actual ticket will get checked once you get on the train, because oftentimes trains, they have like transportation attendants who will come around and check everyone's ticket to make sure that it's correct and that you have one. So you can sometimes, in theory, get away with hopping on a train and maybe you don't get checked and you didn't buy a ticket for it, but it's all right and you kind of got a free ride. So as I said, I'm super nervous. I'm in another country. I don't speak the language. I'm trying to get to this place that I've never been to before, but I map it out. So the final train, actually, luckily enough, it basically dropped me off right on the training ground. All I had to do was walk a couple hundred meters to the training ground after I got off the final train. So I hop on the first train, get to the next stop. I hop on and I didn't really understand the way in which the train system worked, and people may think I'm dumb when I explain this, but I didn't understand that. Let's say you need to take 3 trains to a place, right? I didn't understand that all you need to do is say, let's say I'm going from Darmstadt and I'm going to, in this case, Riedrode. All I need to do is put in that I'm going from point A to point B, Darmstadt to Riedrode, regardless of how many trains I need to switch in between. If I have point A to point B and it says it will cost you this amount of money, all I need to do is buy that ticket. What I thought was I needed to buy a ticket from stop 1 to the next train station, and then stop 2 to stop 3, right? And then 3 to the last one. So this is what I did for that very first time when I'm traveling to this trial. And I hop on the first train, I have the ticket for it, and everything goes smoothly. I actually don't even get checked for it. Okay, whatever, no harm, no foul. I get to the second one, do the same thing, finally find most of the ticket machines weren't working at the time, and I eventually found one, hopped on the second train, get to the third stop. So this is now the last train that I have to take to get me to the final destination where my training is. And I think the second train that I hopped on, I did have my ticket checked, that one. Third train, I get to the station and I figure out where the train is, what track it is that I'm going to be taking, and I see the train that I need that's going to Berstadt or Riedrode or something like that was the final destination that this train was going to, I see it's already on the track. Now on my phone I've already checked and it's not supposed to leave for another 5 to 10 minutes. But in my head, I know, I don't, I should say I don't know anything about the transportation system. I don't know, maybe it's running early, maybe, I messed up, maybe, what if this train is about to leave? And I already know there's not another train coming for quite a long time, and if I miss this one, I'm missing the session, and I won't get to training on time. So I see the train, and I haven't yet bought the final ticket yet, but I'm like, I think it's gonna leave without me, so I don't have enough time to go try and find a ticket machine when there's none that are right in my sight right here. So I just go, I'm like, I haven't been really checked on these past two, and I'll probably get lucky with this third one. It's like 2 stops that I need to go on. So I hop on, and I'm just waiting on the train, and immediately I had a bad omen because I look up, and there's 2 German police officers who are sitting on the train. And now I'm second guessing myself. I'm like, okay, maybe I should hop off and go get a ticket, because what if these guys stand up and they start checking people's tickets? But I'm still just too nervous. I'm like, if I get off, I know this train's immediately gonna leave. So they looked kind of like as if they were off duty, just going home. So I'm like, all right, I'm probably fine. Train doors close. Eventually we start to leave. As I said, I don't have a ticket for this particular leg of my journey. So wouldn't you know, about a minute or 2 in, all of a sudden, I hear a woman's voice, and so now I hear a woman's voice, and I hear her coming up and down the train saying, Fahrkarte bitte, which in German means tickets, please. And I'm like, oh, of course, here we go. So now it's I just gotta figure out what to do. I have no idea what to do. So she comes up to me, asks me. As I said, I knew some German. I tried to study while I was over there, but I am in no means fluent or really, I would say, proficient at all in the language of German. And I think, honestly, that probably helped me a little bit in this situation, because I just was pegged kind of for the dumb American foreigner and didn't get in trouble, really. So she comes up to me, asks me for my ticket, and I respond to her in German, and I'm kind of like, I handed her the ticket that I had from the previous leg of the trip, so the second train that I took. As I said, this was the third one. And she's looking at it, and she's looking at it, and she's like, and she says to me, this isn't where you're going right now. Like, this is a completely different ticket. And I'm kind of just, saying to her in German, I'm sorry, my German's not very good. What exactly? Oh, is that not the right ticket? I didn't know. I'm sorry, I'm confused. And it's obviously very broken German, and she can tell that I can't really speak the language. And so she's asking me, well, where are you going right now? But for whatever reason, I couldn't understand that question. I didn't know what she was asking, and I just kept kind of asking her, like, what? I don't speak German, I'm sorry. And eventually she points to the map, and she's like, which stop are you going to? And I'm like, oh, just, the Riedrode one. It's the next stop. Luckily, it was the next stop, and it wasn't like the full length of the train, because I may have had a different outcome. And she kind of is a little bit agitated and just hands me the ticket back and kind of says okay and walks off. But I don't know, is she going to write me a real ticket, or, is this the end of this interaction, or what is the situation here? She hasn't really said anything, and even if she had, I wouldn't have known what it was. So she walks away, and now I'm just praying. I'm like, please get to the stop as fast as possible so I can get off of this train and get away from here. So we get to the stop. I haven't had any more run-ins with the ticket takers or the police or anything like that. I managed to not get in trouble, and I managed to get away scot-free somehow. But I've now arrived at the training session, and I go and I walk in, and again, this is a daunting experience. I'm walking up to this club where everyone speaks German. I don't know if anyone speaks English. I found out that the coaching staff didn't speak English, and I just kind of walked through the gates, and luckily the coaching staff looked and saw me and saw, hey, this kid looks like maybe the kid we're having in on trial. He looks kind of confused, and maybe we should go talk to him. So he comes up, introduces himself in German, kind of asks me, do you speak any German? I say, well, a little bit, and I ask if he speaks English, and he's like, no, not really, but there's a couple of other players on the team who speak English. Okay, perfect. They bring me into the changing room and get me some gear to wear for the session, and one or two guys kind of start to filter in, and a handful of them speak English, so I start to speak to some of the guys, and then we go out into the session, and it was a good session. It was, as I said, this was the first time I'm ever going out into this level, and I have no idea what to expect. I have no idea what 7th division soccer in German is like whatsoever, so I could be completely out of my element and everyone could just run circles around me, or I could be the best player out here by far, or I could be right somewhere in the middle. I truly have no idea. But it wound up, I would say, in terms of my level, that I was at the higher end. And I think, honestly, the main reason for that was just because the level in which I was training at consistently with my club, training 4 times a week and playing matches, plus doing lots of training on my own, I was super fit and just sharp. And most of the players, some of the really good players in this team, you could tell that they were really class and they were good players, but just kind of that fitness level wasn't quite up to the level of maybe what a professional would be at. And from more trials that I went on, that's kind of what I noticed in a lot of different levels and a lot of different teams, was there were so many players who were very technically and tactically sound and could play the game at a high level, but maybe that last bit, they just lacked that ability to do it at a high level for 90 minutes and be very fit. So as I said, I enjoyed the first session. There were definitely some times where I made little mistakes, but once I kind of got into the rhythm and I got past those jitters, everything was just football, and it all became easy. And as I also spoke to a couple of guys who were speaking English there and were being friendly, because that's also a big thing that helps you ease into a session and feel more confident, is when you feel like people are kind of being friendly to you and maybe ask you your name, or just because, as I'll describe here, there's sessions where I go and people don't even look at you and they just don't acknowledge that you're there, or they scream at you, and you'll get everything in between. And this was one of the most positive experiences that I had, in that everyone was very friendly, very nice. Coaching staff as well was super polite. So I ended the session. As I said, I felt like I did well, especially as I got into the game. I kind of started to prove myself. Some of the other players could see that I could play, and that's always a big thing, is you kind of have to prove yourself amongst the group before they start passing you the ball and really relying on you as to be an integral part of the team. If they give you the ball a couple times and your first 3 touches go 10 yards away from you and you can't complete a pass, it's going to be like, well, all right, I'm done giving him the ball for right now. But I was completing some passes, and I was being dangerous and doing good things. So overall, it was a good session, and I ended the session. One of the guys who spoke English in the team came over with me, and the coaching staff wanted to talk to me, and they said, we really liked you and we would love to bring you into our team. Why don't you come back another time for another session, and we can talk really logistics about what what you would need to come in with us, and you can talk to our club president and we can try and figure something out. So this, like I said, this was my first trial at all. So now I'm on cloud nine. I'm like, I just have a 7th division team in Germany saying like they want to offer me a contract and they're interested in me and I can play at this higher level, and I wasn't crazy all this time. And granted, 7th division isn't the Bundesliga again, but it was a decent level, and as I said, it was another step up for me. So I'm so excited. And also having this first trial experience go well gave me the confidence to really be positive and eager to keep doing it and keep trialing and try and get more offers from more teams and try and just figure out what the best situation for me was going to be moving forward. So I left it at that, and as I explained to you guys all the different trials, I'll try and sum up each team sort of in one block before I move on to the next one. So there were some trials that I went on in between before I came back to these guys for my second session with them, but I returned back for my second session, and this was even more comfortable because now they already kind of know my face and they know that they've seen me before. And again, I had a pretty good session, felt like I did well. And then after the session, I went in, and the whole team, it was a Friday night session. Every Friday night they do a little, I guess you could say, get together in the clubhouse kind of beer hall type room that the club has, and everyone usually gets a drink or two. The coach speaks about the previous week's games, talks about the games for the upcoming weekend, and just kind of an hour or so where the team gets to hang out, socialize. Some other people from the club are there. And the club president was there, so I go down, I get introduced to the club president, and the club president says hello to me in English and says, "Would you like a drink?" Again in English. I'm like, okay, sure. Then we listen to the talk kind of with the team, and then he says, why don't we go up to my office and we'll talk about maybe you joining us for the future and what that could mean. I'm like, perfect. And we didn't bring anyone else from the team, i.e. anyone who spoke English, because at this point I'm thinking, okay, he's fluent in English, so we're good to go here. And this is a story that I always tell when people ask me, well, are you fluent in German? Like, are you conversational, or where's your German at? And I always tell this story because I think it kind of illustrates where I was at in terms of my German. We get up to the office and the president says to me, so do you speak any German? And I answer in German, and I say a little bit. I'm still learning, but really not the best. And he says to me, okay, well, I don't really speak much English. So clearly his English level were right about where my German levels were. So he starts speaking in German. And it was a bumpy conversation for sure. Most of the time I needed him to repeat what he had said possibly 2-3 times to really understand what he was saying. He had to speak very slowly. And this was also a conversation in terms of us talking about housing and money and jobs and things of that nature, that you really want to be clear and concise and have all of your points and details laid out in a way that both parties can understand. So this isn't a conversation that you want to have miscommunication or misunderstanding. But much to honestly the surprise of myself, I was able to have this conversation with him, and most of what he was saying, I was able to understand it, and I was able to respond. And sometimes I had to slip in an English word and see if maybe he knew that, because I didn't know the German word. And we were able to move the conversation along, and we both understood what the other one was saying. So I came home from that, and I was proud of myself because I felt as if I am actually learning this language a bit, and I'm picking it up, and And although it's not pretty, I am somewhat conversational. So that was a cool experience. And the conclusion to the conversation was essentially that with the money that they were going to be able to pay me, they thought it's probably best if you also were working a job. And I said, yeah, I'd be more than willing to do that. I would just need help finding something. So he kind of left it as, let me go out and put some feelers out, see if I can find you some work, see if I can find you a place to stay, but we'd like for you to come and join us. So I'm like, okay, perfect. And that's really where we left it at, and we would be in touch soon. That's where we leave off with that very first club that I trialed with. The second trial that I ever went on was 7th Division again. It was for a club in Wiesbaden, which is a little bit west of where I was in Darmstadt, closer to Mainz, which is a pretty big city in Germany, and it was a club called FC 1934 Bierstadt. And went fairly smooth with the transportation to get there, not too much worry. And as I hopped into this session, this was a team that was much lower in the table comparatively to the team I had trialed with previously, Ried Roda, I believe, was like 6th, 7th in the table. This team was more closer to having a relegation battle, about 14, 15 down in the table. And I could tell right away that this wasn't as high level of a club. The players weren't quite as good as the previous team I had trained with. The coach, he spoke a bit of German and a bit of English. Well, he spoke German and he spoke a bit of English as well. And he definitely seemed interested, and I felt like I did really well at this session, and I was definitely probably at the top in terms of with the players that were in this group. And the coach seemed very, very interested in me and was asking those same questions after the session. Would you need help with apartment? Would you need help with money, job, all those types of questions? And we talked about those things, and I said, yeah, I would need help with an apartment. I would need help with money and all those questions that we had. And then he said, okay, well, let me talk to the board, talk to some people in the club, and see what we can do, see what we can work out. And I said okay, and then thanked him very much, and got changed, and wound up, there was a guy who was in the team who was American, I think, either American or had a number of family in America, and his family was from Rochester, New York, and I live in the capital region of New York, so Rochester, New York's like a couple hours out west. I've been to Rochester many times, and it was funny, just such a small world to run into somebody who knows a city like Rochester all the way across the world. And he was a super nice guy and offered to drive me to the train station, because that training ground where I was at was quite a longer walk to the train station that I had gotten off at. So he dropped me off there. We talked a little bit, and he was a super nice guy. I kind of asked him some questions about the team, and he said, yeah, it's not really the best level, but we're trying to bring in some new players, and so somebody like you could probably help us, and we're trying to make sure that we stay up and maybe make a push next season or something like that. So it wound up, I spoke with the sporting director who I was in contact with to set up the trial, and they had some conversations and eventually got back to me and said, hey, listen, it's just going to be sort of too big of an ordeal to bring you on from a financial perspective from our club, and we think that you're a good player, we think you have the quality to be with us, but we just can't support getting you an apartment, getting you money, all those types of things. And as I go through some of these trials, that was kind of a lot of what I was hearing, and to be honest, it's a lot of what you guys may hear if you go out and you trial with teams in the semi-professional or even lower level professional teams. As a foreigner, you need a lot more to join a team than a German resident. It's just a fact. oftentimes you'll need a visa. You'll need help with finding an apartment or a house. Sometimes you'll need a car if you need to get to training, or you'll need money for transportation. You'll need probably oftentimes a higher salary than would a domestic player. For example, somebody who's playing in 5th, 6th division, their main income is what they're doing 9 to 5 during the week or wherever they work. And they're not necessarily relying on the money coming in from soccer, albeit it's great for them and it's always nice to make a little extra cash. More often than not, they're not relying on that to put a roof over their head and feed themselves. So for myself, that's more what I was really looking for. I would work a job if a club was able to set up a job for me, but in a perfect world, I was hoping that soccer could put the roof over my head and could feed me and could pay for my expenses to live over there. So as I go through some of these trials, that's a lot of what I was facing was, we like you, but we don't have enough to do everything that you're looking for. And it's just kind of something that you have to face, and while it can be frustrating, you just have to remind yourself that all I need is one team, right? I've talked about this before. I just need one team, one coach, one club to be able to take a chance on me and to be able to support me and help me with an apartment, help me with some money, help me with those types of things. So we move on, and next trial was with a club called VfB Unterliederbach, 7th division again in the Wiesbaden group, and this club was actually in Frankfurt, in the city, and it was the first trial that I'd went to where I had sort of an awkward experience, I guess. There was just a weird vibe that I don't know how to describe about being in this session. From the start, I showed up at this training ground. I was very early, and I was just kind of waiting around because all the youth players were still there. I didn't see anybody for the senior team. I didn't see anybody from the coaching staff, and also I didn't know who the coach was. I didn't know what he looked like. So as I start to see some older guys filter in, I am trying to decipher who I think the coach probably is, just based on look. And I still can't really figure it out, and a lot of the players and the coach as well, they kind of see me over there, but nobody says anything to me, or nobody really addresses that I'm there. I'm just kind of waiting outside the field, and this was something that I felt as if I really grew as a person, because in situations like these, I started to be more brave and come out of my shell, and I'm a relatively shy person. Once I get to know people and I open up and I feel comfortable, I like to be social and I like to talk a lot, but in the very early stages, especially in a situation like this where there's a language barrier, I had a lot of anxiety and a lot of nerves about just walking up to somebody and speaking in broken German or speaking in English and trying to figure out where a coach was or where the first team was training or something like that. So I felt kind of annoyed a little bit when the coach and all the players walked right past me and nobody really even said anything. I was speaking with the sporting director to set up the trial, and the sporting director said, "Yep, the coach knows you're coming. He knows you're going to be there tonight." And so, granted, it's not his fault. It's on me. If I want to come trial, I need to take the initiative and be assertive and say, "Hey, I'm here." It's not his responsibility to make me feel comfortable and come up and say hi to me and do that type of thing. But at the same time, I'm, in a perfect world, I would have loved for him to, as they did in the first trial, come up to me and say, "Hey, are you Brendan?" Blah, blah, blah. So at this point, I don't know what to do because, as I said, I'm kind of a shy person. And I honestly thought about for a second, well, they just walked past me and they didn't really say anything, so maybe I should just go home. I don't know. I don't know if they speak English, or I don't know how this is going to go. I was really genuinely nervous about it, and my whole motto, just being over in Germany, was always just don't get back on that plane to America and think back what if and have regrets and wish that you had done things differently. So I mustered up every ounce of courage that I could. I over and over in my head rehearsed what I was going to say in German to the coach as I approached him, and I walked out onto that field, and they were on the other side of the field, so I had to walk basically halfway across the field. All the players are looking at me. All the coaches are looking at me. They're like, who is this guy? I come up to him and I ask in German, are you the coach? And he's like, yeah. And he speaks a little bit English, so we start talking in English, and he's like, why don't you go and bring your stuff into the locker room? It's locker room number 2. Get changed, come on back out. So I go into the locker room. The locker room's locked. So I put my boots on quickly just outside the door, and I just bring my bag with me. And so I have all my stuff with me, and I come up to the coach, and I'm like, hey, I'm sorry, the locker room is actually closed, so I'm just going to leave my stuff out here if that's okay. He's like, okay, that's fine. Then I went and I hopped into the rondo, and so I already have that initial sort of awkward entrance into the training environment where I had to really put myself out there and figure out what was going on. But that really wasn't the only reason why the whole experience was, I said, kind of a weird atmosphere. I hopped into the training, and it was really just, we did a rondo, then we did a dynamic kind of warm-up, and then we hopped into like 1v1s and 2v2s, but it was on this massive pitch, and there was, I'm trying to remember, so it was basically just split the group in half were on one goal post with a goalkeeper in one goal, and then half were on the opposite goal with a goalkeeper, and they were on a post. So like a player would knock the ball across the field into the other team's person who was in front of the line, and then they would just go 1v1 to goal. And so we did that for a while. Actually did really well defending, and there's only, I think, one time attacking where I didn't score, where this huge center back that they had just shrugged me off the ball. But then again, 1v1 attacking is not really my forte. It's not a part of my game that I excel in, and it's not really the style that I play. Oftentimes I play in the center of the park, or I play fullback, and the way I like to play is dominate possession, and I'm always looking to pass and get my teammates involved. And when I dribble, oftentimes it's to advance the ball or to get out of trouble. It's not necessarily a very creative and attacking flair type dribble, which is a lot of times what you need in specific 1v1 situations. So with all that being said, I was proud of the way that I did in that, and then we progressed into just a small-sided game, 6v6, something like that. Did really well in that, and then there was just, he blew the whistle and we went and had a drink, and then I thought we were still going to keep training because it hadn't been that long, and then guys started moving the goal around, and some people were just taking shots, some people walked off the pitch. There was no kind of bring everyone in at the end of the session, hey fellas, this went well, or whatever, like, see you next time. It was just sort of fizzled out, and people started going in every which direction, and I was like, are we done? Are we still going? Are those guys just leaving? And then as more people started to walk into the locker room, I realized, all right, I guess we're done. And I grabbed my stuff and I walked into the locker room and started to get changed. And the whole way down, I'm walking alongside the coach and another player, but he's not really talking to me. And then as we get right to the locker room, he's like, why don't you get changed and then come out and talk to me? I'm like, okay. Come out and talk to him. He says, listen, I like the way that you play. I think you can play at this level. And actually, no, I remember now. He asked me, he was like, well, what do you think? Do you think you can play at this level? And I remember thinking in my head, like, yes, I do, and I think I just proved that, but what do you expect me to say here? And at the same time, it's not really my decision to make or my opinion that matters in this situation. It's your club, it's your team. You really decide if you want me or not. I think I can play this level. And I told him, yeah, I think I can play at this level. And I think I can play with your team. And then he was like, yeah, I would agree. And I would say that as well. The one thing he said, which was tied back to that 1v1 instance I told you about, he said, I think there were some moments where you could be a bit physically stronger, and maybe that might be something that you would have to work on. But I think from a technical perspective, from a tactical perspective, speed of play, ability to play, all those types of things, you could do well. And then he was asking me, would your club, were they looking to get money for you? And I didn't quite understand what he was asking. But if basically what he meant was, if you transfer mid-year, if you go in the mid-season transfer window, because you're on a 1-year contract with every club, whether it be professional or semi-pro or amateur, whatever level, you sign a 1-year sort of commitment to the club that you're playing with. And that's what I was on with my club in Darmstadt. And so he was asking, if you are looking to leave, would they want the transfer fee, which is the way that it works, is if you leave mid-season, or if you leave, let's say you're on a 2-year contract or something like that. For anyone who if you understand professional football, you know that if you want to obtain a player's services prior to the end of their contract, you need to pay the club oftentimes a transfer fee that's negotiated and determined by both parties. That's really in the pro game. At this level, the amateur semi-professional level, it's a pretty standard, okay, if you're jumping 2 leagues, it's this amount. If you're jumping 1 league, it's this amount. If it's all structured and set up, it's predetermined what the transfer fee will be. A lot of clubs don't really, I guess, request it or pay it. Players are allowed to move a lot more freely. But I didn't know what my club was going to want to do. And not to mention with him saying, we don't really have a lot of money, and if they do want that transfer fee, I don't think we're going to be able to afford it. That was a kind of sign to me that they probably wouldn't have a ton of money to be able to help me out and support me and maybe find me an apartment, maybe find me work, money, those types of things. So the whole experience with just the vibe I got from the training, like I said, there weren't a ton of guys in the team who I felt were super excited that I was there, and the vibe from the coach and kind of that conversation I had with him where I just felt that there wasn't going to be a lot of help in terms of money, I sort of wrote off this team, or maybe put it sort of lower on my list, just thinking it's probably not going to work out with this team. And I had spoken to the coach maybe once or twice after, and even though I wasn't really reaching out to him, he was reaching back out and seeing if I was free on a couple of different nights if I'd come back out and train. And fortunately, the times he did reach out, I was at different trials, so I couldn't. But it did show that he was, I think, interested in me and did think I could help his team. And, who knows, that I'm in America right now, so with any of these teams, I could reach back out to him and see if I need something to have a team to come play for. But that was VfB Unterliederbach, and the 4th trial was actually by far the worst experience that I had probably in Germany as a whole. It was really, I shouldn't even say it was a trial, it was the trial that never was. It was the trial that never occurred. It was, up to this point, the farthest I was ever going to have to travel to get to a session. It was on a Friday night, so it was okay because I had the day off from training on Friday, I believe, and then Saturday we always had the day off before the game. And it was going to be 3 hours via 2 trains and a bus. So I hop on the first train, and that goes smoothly. get to the next stop, hop on the second train, and then I arrive in a city, and I believe it was Limburg, something like that. It was a cool little city, and it was all lit up, and there's a bunch of little shops and restaurants all around, and it was a nice place, but it wound up being one of the places that occurs in my nightmares, because this was now the last bit where I needed to figure out how to get on the bus to get to the training ground. And the way that the train tickets worked were different than the way that the bus tickets worked. And the train ticket machines were typically pretty easy to use. I could pay with Euro, or could pay with my card and just type what I needed to do, and then the ticket would be printed out. The bus was something completely different, and so when I would try and buy the bus tickets on the train ticket machines, it just wasn't the same, and it didn't work. And so first of all, I'm trying to figure out even where the bus stop is, where the bus that's coming for me is. And I've walked all around this town probably 2-3 times. Luckily, I had quite a bit of time before the bus was supposed to arrive, but I just couldn't find it. Eventually, I find it, so I'm like, all right, now I know at least where I need to be once I can figure out how to get a ticket. As I said, I can't use the train ticket machines because they don't work for the same types of tickets as the buses. And most Germans, what they do is they have an app on their phone that's the regional transportation system or something like that. It provides you all the different lines and where they all go, and you can buy tickets on it and all types of things. So I was trying to do that, but it wouldn't allow me to do that on my phone because I didn't have a German card. It wouldn't accept my American card, and I couldn't put money in. I was trying to use PayPal. I was trying to use everything I could possibly think of to try and do it. And I'm like, all right, well, the one time I had taken a bus previously, it didn't get checked. My ticket never got checked. And a lot of times the way the buses work in Germany is there's a front door, and then there's a middle door and a back door to the bus. So when it will come and stop, people can get on in 3 different locations. And in my head, I'm like, all right, the last time that I hopped on a bus, I got on the middle door and I kind of went and sat in the back. There was nobody there to check my ticket or anything. The bus driver never asked for my ticket. So hopefully with this bus, since I can't figure out how to purchase a ticket, I will just hop on in the middle or something like that, and then I'll be good, and I'll just kind of, take this as a free ride, but I'll get there. And that's what's most important, is I just need to get to this training session. I've already traveled like 2.5 hours at this point. And I didn't realize, however, that this was the first stop, sort of like, I guess the bus sort of depot was where this first bus was leaving from, and this was the first stop, and then it was going to travel at all these different stops. And when everyone was getting on the bus, everyone had to go through the front and show their ticket or scan their ticket with the bus driver in the very front. So I'm like, crap, I can't even do what I said I was going to do. And even the people who got on in the middle or the back, he would come back and check them before he even left the station. So it wasn't the type of thing where it was just kind of a quick stop. People could hop on wherever. Some people got checked, some people really didn't. And then he went along his way. Everybody was getting their ticket checked. And so I'm desperately trying to figure out on my phone how to do it, and I can't figure out how to do it. And at this point, I don't know what to do. I don't know who to call or who to even ask, because I could have gone up to somebody, and looking back on it, I guess that's maybe what I should have done, and ask if somebody spoke English and somebody could try and help me figure it out. But as I said, I can admit this, I'm not the most confident person in every single social situation, especially something like that when I'm in another country and I don't speak the language, and I'm in a city I've never been to before, and it's raining and people aren't really looking to talk. They're trying to get to where they're looking to go because it's pouring outside, and I just didn't know what to do. And so eventually I didn't get a ticket in time, and I didn't get on the bus, and there wasn't going to be another bus coming that night, and so I missed that session, and I didn't get to go, and I messaged the coach and I said I'm sorry and I'm not going to be able to make it. Something happened, couldn't figure it out, blah, blah, blah. And he messages me back. He says, oh, you should have told me. I could have come and picked you up. And I remember just thinking I wouldn't have done that, because it was the first time I was ever going to trial with this team. I didn't want my first impression to be, hey, can I come trial for your team? And can you also come and pick me up and, go way out of your way to bring me to this training session? And it wasn't something that you had offered, so I wasn't going to impose myself in that way. I just didn't feel right about that. And at the same time, I guess I was annoyed too in this fact that he's saying that now after I had that difficulty. I was like, well, if you had really wanted to offer that, why don't you offer that when I was saying, yep, I'm on my way tonight, rather than, have me pay for all these different trains and buses and stuff to get out there. But neither here nor there. So this was a really hard experience and a really hard night for me, because I would say this is probably when I really considered throwing in the towel and just calling it quits and hopping on a plane and coming back home to America. This was about end of October. As I said, this was Friday night. So Thursday night, I had been really hopeful that I was going to get called into the first team for the cup match that they had. There was a number of injuries in the squad, a number of suspensions. I had trained with the team the whole week, and I felt like maybe this was my opportunity. And roster came out for the first team, wasn't in the 18, so I was like, all right, no big deal. I had decided with two friends of mine, one who played for the club but had left the club that year, and one who was still with the club, who was playing the second team with me. We had decided, well, let's just go to the game and watch it. We'll hop on the train, maybe we'll get some food beforehand or something, and it will just be a night to kind of get out and watch the match and do something fun. So on my way into town to catch the train and meet up with my buddy, I get a message from one of the directors of the club and says, hey, Brendan. I'm like, hey, what's going on? And he says, are you available tonight? And I'm like, what do you mean? It's like, well, we just had another injury in the first team, and the first team coach wants to know if you can play tonight. Mind you, I'm already on a train headed into the city. But I'm like, okay, sure, I'm on a train headed into the city, but I can hop off right here, get on one coming back home, where I wasn't even that far along. I was like, I'll just jog back home, get changed, and be ready. I might be a few minutes late if you guys can wait for me, but yeah, I'll come. I mean, I was probably going to sit on the bench for the whole game, but so what? So I do that. I hop off the train, I jog all the way home, I get changed into my gear, and I go hop on the bus. And then I am sitting on the bus, and there was a player who I had known who had been injured all week, who was in the second team. And as I'm walking out to the bus, he's walking out to the bus as well with his gear. And kind of strikes me as odd for a second, and I didn't really know what to think, but I'm like, okay. Then I go hop on the bus. the first team coach comes up to me and says, "Oh, what are you doing here?" I'm like, "Well, I was told that you needed me for tonight. I was told that you asked for me to come and play." And he said, "Oh, well, I actually asked this other guy, the one who I just mentioned was injured most of the week, and I didn't know that he was healthy now, so, I mean, if he's healthy, I'm probably going to take him." And I said, "Oh, okay, so you're not bringing me tonight?" Like, I'm just trying to figure out, like, what's the situation, because there's been multiple different people communicating with different parties, some on behalf of others, or so I thought on behalf of others, and eventually we just come to the conclusion, the coach says, "No, I'm actually going to bring this other guy." Brought a couple players who hadn't trained with the first team really at all when I'm training with them consistently week after week, but it is what it is. So I hop off the bus, and then I have to walk past everybody in the first team with all my stuff, and just felt so embarrassed and just aggravated that I did all that, hopped off the train, and I was mentally prepared to not play that night. I had prepared that whole day like I wasn't going to play that night, and then quickly had to try and change my mindset and run all the way home to get ready, and then to have all that happen was frustrating and just didn't feel, and then nobody from the club ever really kind of addressed that situation, and I don't need anyone to hold my hand, or I understand that football is a cutthroat business, but nonetheless, I don't think that was necessarily the best way to handle that, and I didn't feel like it was just an awesome experience for me to do that, but it was what it was. So that was Thursday night, and then I wound up not going to the match to watch it, and I wound up just kind of staying home and being kind of bummed out. But I had this trial on Friday with this club, FC Dorndorf, and it was going to be a big, long travel day, so it was going to kind of take my mind off of it, I thought. And then I wound up having this nightmare of a travel experience where I couldn't figure out how to get there. And so then I am really not stranded, but I'm just kind of alone in this city that I've never been to, 1,000 miles away from my friends and family. It's pouring, raining, it's pitch black, and I'm like, I just need to call somebody, because I've just had the worst 2 days and I can't do this anymore. I don't have it in me. So I call my mom, and I had to get on most cities in Germany, and if you're in the city square, they'll have a public Wi-Fi. So I had to get on public Wi-Fi and call her on WhatsApp, and I was like, I'm done, Mom. I've just had the worst 2 days, and I don't know what to do anymore, and I feel like I'm trying so hard, but I can't have things go my way. And it was embarrassing because I'm breaking down into tears, and I'm ready to give up, but I'm also in this city square, so I don't want to be that dude that's just openly weeping in public in front of people. So I kind of turned and was facing a building. So I'm just facing this building so nobody can see me, and I'm crying, and I'm talking to her, and I'm like, oh, I don't know, I might look at flights or something like that. And it was a weird experience because, as I said in the last podcast, she she was at work. It was like 1, 2 in the afternoon or something like that, and she's just kind of going about her day, and meanwhile I'm on the other side of the world, and it's raining, and I'm out in a storm, and it's night, and I'm going through all this, and we're just in such different places. It was kind of just weird, like the juxtaposition of the settings that both of us were in. But I really thought I was gonna quit, and I made my way back home, took all the trains back home. Not to mention I probably paid, I don't know, maybe 40, 50 euros or something for all this travel to try and get out there, and it was all for nothing. But I talked more with her. I talked more with some of my other friends and teammates that were there, and they were just like, don't quit now. Don't give up now. It's going to come all this way and then have nothing to show for it. And that was, again, what I went back to my German motto. My German mindset was just that plane in December when you get back to America. Once you touch down in America, don't leave with a single regret. Don't leave with a what if and a wish that you had done this. And I knew if I went back in October, way before I was supposed to, I would have wondered, what if I'd stayed for November? What if that one team I was waiting for was in November? So, pulled up my bootstraps a little bit, and I just said, all right, let's go. Let's figure this out. Let's keep going. So, trial number 5 was with 7th Division. There was a club called FSV Hellas Schierstein. I'm probably butchering that, but the thing that's kind of unique about German clubs is a lot of them are kind of divvied up by ethnic groups or nationalities. So you'll have like a team with a ton of Turkish players who immigrated over to Germany, or Greek players, or Italians, or something like that. So this was a predominantly Greek team. Obviously, it's not exclusively any specific nationality, but the coach for this team was Greek, and there was a couple of Greek players, and so it was cool to just see that there was so much cultural diversity in really Europe, but in Germany and where I was, it was interesting to see that. So I went and I trialed with this team. It was kind of a funny experience. I guess maybe I misread the message, or the coach accidentally sent me the wrong time, but I went to the ground on a night when he said they were training, and I showed up, and there was only women were training, and then like the youth players. And so I waited around a little bit, and then I messaged the coach, and I was like, hey, I don't see anybody here. And he was like, oh yeah, actually, I'm sorry if I told you the wrong day. We're actually training tomorrow, or 2 days from now, or something like that. So I was like, all right, no problem. So it's kind of a wasted night that first night, but I went home, and then I came back again a few days later, and there was a couple friendly guys. It was an okay session. Again, I felt like I was one of the best players there, one of the better players there, but I didn't feel like it was an environment where I was really going to grow and push myself as a footballer. I didn't love the session. I felt like it wasn't the best organized, and the drills that we did, there was just too much open space for the numbers that we had, and it just wasn't super sharp. And although I wanted to play at a higher level, I also wanted to be with a team where I could grow and really get better as a player. So maybe when I make that jump from 7th division to 5th or to 4th or something like that, I'm still ready to do it and I'm sharp. So while I'm trying to figure out those components of can I be supported financially and get an apartment and all those things, I still want to look for a high-level football situation where I can grow. So this club was interested in me, but again, it was kind of one I put a bit lower on the list just because I didn't think I was going to be challenged and pushed as much in this team. It was still an option, but wasn't at the top of the list. So the 6th trial, I went on 7 trials in total, and the 6th trial was once I kind of had emailed everybody in my region, I started thinking, well, hey, why don't I see if I can email some clubs in different regions? Maybe I could see a new part of Germany, see a new city, travel a bit, and maybe get some responses from some other clubs in other places, maybe at even higher levels. So these next two trials were actually with 6th division clubs. I went to a trial in Berlin with a 6th division club called FSV Berliner Strahlau, and so I had to take a regional train, which was more what you would anticipate a train would look like in the United States, like an Amtrak or something like that, where it's a couple hours and people really use them for traveling rather than transportation, if that makes sense. And so I arrived in Berlin, and I went and I trained with them the first day, and unfortunately I knew right away I really wasn't going to be able to make this work with this club because they couldn't provide any pay. It was completely amateur. It was a good level. The coach was actually a former baseball player, played with the University of Louisville in America, and spoke English, so we got to talking. He was a super nice guy, and he offered to help put me in contact with some teams at higher levels in Berlin that could maybe help me provide me what I needed financially and that type of thing. So as we kind of got to talking, it just made sense that even though I was supposed to train with them twice, he said, you're welcome to come train with us again, but I don't know if this is going to be a perfect match for both of us, so it's up to you whether or not you want to come again. And I wound up deciding not to go to the session again for a couple reasons. Big one being that I knew it wasn't going to be a team that I was going to sign for. Another one was in that first session, it was another one where I didn't really feel like anybody wanted me to be there. Not many people spoke to me or even really looked at me, and had a couple people kind of yell some things here and there or go a little bit hard on a challenge. And when I was leaving, most clubs in Germany, the way it works with most of the players, when somebody leaves, they'll kind of go around and say goodbye to everybody and, handshake, dap them up, whatever. And so I kind of wanted to just fit in and not be, I guess, culturally disrespectful and not do what the culture sort of asked of everyone. So I went around, and almost everybody, they just kind of did the thing where, like, if they were having a conversation over here and talking to someone else, they would just stick their hand out and kind of, like, nobody was even really acknowledging that I was there or saying goodbye to me or looking at me, really. So I just didn't feel super welcome, and like that I wanted to hurry up and make sure that I could get back to this session. But also it gave me some more time to explore Berlin, and I got to go around and see a lot of the sites in Berlin, and Berlin's a really amazing city, and that was a lot of fun and a cool travel experience. So that was the penultimate trial. The very last one that I want to just tell you guys about is the team that I was actually supposed to play with, and I've mentioned this team a couple times. It was in 6th division up in Bremen, and it was DJK Germania Blumenthal, or in German, DOK Germania Blumenthal. I went and, again, took regional trains up there. Pretty good travel experience. Absolutely loved Bremen as a city. It had a big city vibe, but it had so much cool architecture and so much kind of small town feel to it as well. It's hard to describe. There was just, the city square felt very, very historical, it had its own unique imprint, and it felt like a cool place to live if I was going to come and live in a German city and play soccer. So I traveled to the training ground, which was an interesting experience once I finally got to Bremen, because the training ground was kind of tucked away a bit in these woods, and there was a path that led up to the training ground, but it was at night, so it wasn't super well lit, and from where I was coming from, I kind of had to like walk through the woods, and I just sort of emerged through the woods, and the coach was waiting for me out there. Incredibly nice guy, and probably one of the nicest coaches that I had encountered with all these trials. And I trained with them the first night, and I felt like they were a relatively young team. They weren't doing too well in terms of the table, but they were a young team, and I felt like there were definitely some good players, but also, again, I was near the top level, and I felt like I could really come in and earn a place right away and help this team. So I stayed in Bremen for 2 training sessions, so it was a Monday and a Wednesday. I trained with them twice. Both times I felt like it went really well. The very first night I scrimmaged with the first team against their reserve team, and mind you, it was their reserve team, a lot of older guys. I felt like I did really, really well, and the coach liked what I was doing. So it was exciting, and then, as I said, this coach was incredibly nice to me, offered to drive me all the way back to my hotel after the first session, and only spoke German, so we were kind of having broken conversations in German. Again, proud of myself that I was starting to learn German, and I had to Google Translate a few words here and there, but I'm having conversations with him in German, and then the second night he offers to bring me to the train station, because I was right after training that night. I was going to hop back on the regional train and get myself back to Darmstadt. So he wants to buy me dinner first before I leave, because if you can't already tell, he was interested in signing me as a player and definitely wanted to bring me in, and we talked about all the logistics. He said, yeah, maybe I can help you with housing. I can't really help, the club can't help too much in terms of paying for the housing, but we can help you locate something, and we could probably get you a job. So I was like, all right, well, that's, that kind of covers our basis. So we go and we have this dinner, and again, you sort of take it for granted how easy it is to just have a conversation with somebody over dinner, but we're having this conversation, and as I said, he doesn't speak English, so it's just really relies on my German skills, and it felt like I was in a language class, and it was the speaking component of the final exam or something like that, as I'm having this conversation with this coach. But it was nice, and he was incredibly generous to do that for me and then bring me to the train station, and I probably got my train left at 10 at night over there, and then I basically traveled all through the night, got back to Darmstadt maybe 4 or 5 a.m., something like that, because I had a super long layover in a city that is blanking on me at this moment in time, but I had to wait there for like 3 hours until the next train came, and then I eventually made it back to Darmstadt, as I said, early in the morning, and pretty much slept that whole day. And so now I had been on a number of trials, and I had seen a bunch of different levels of football, a bunch of different regions of football as well, met a lot of people, and now it was really time for me to make a decision. And at the time, I felt like what was best for me was to go with this Bremen team. As I said, I love the city. The coach was incredibly welcoming. The team was incredibly welcoming and nice to me. It was a high level. It was 6th division. And I also felt as if I could come in and really do well and make a name for myself at this level, which is kind of a big component that I wanted to have, is in maybe like a team like FSG Riedrode, that first team, I could do well, but I didn't know if right from the moment that I got there I would mark myself in the team and get a starting spot and really boss the game, which is kind of what I needed to do for my trajectory in terms of how quickly can I become a professional. So I felt like in this moment here, in this team, and with the help of the coach finding me a job, helping with apartment, those types of things as well, I felt like this was a really good situation for me to enter into. And that's what I wound up doing, and I signed with the club, and obviously, unfortunately, I never made it over there because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and I'm still in America right now, but that was really the plan for me for 2020, was to head over to Germany and play the rest of the season with DJK Germania Blumenthal. So that's the story of my trials over in Germany, some of the adventures that I had, some of the highs, some of the lows. Again, like I always say, I want to give you guys an honest perspective, an honest, really story of what it's like just trying to chase the dream. I know I use that phrase constantly, but it's not always something that's going to be pretty. So I want to show you what it looks like when I'm doing well, when I'm having those good trials and the coaches are interested, and I want to show you what it's like when it's not like that, and you know, I'm getting dropped from my own team, I'm going to trials and I can't make it there, or I am being told by the coaches that they're not interested, or that they can't really fund me coming in. Really, whatever the case may be, I just want you guys to understand what it's like, and understand that it's not always going to be easy, and it certainly wasn't always easy for me, and I hope this kind of illustrates that and puts it into perspective a little bit. And maybe for some who just saw me in Germany and thought, wow, that's amazing and that's just so cool. Yes, it was very cool. There was a lot of cool parts, but there was also a lot of hardship and a lot of adversity that was faced by myself that I had to overcome in order to really have a successful experience over there. So that is what I hope this podcast regarding the trials will do, and also really just this podcast as a whole will shed some light on what it's like to go overseas and play a sport, or to do something a bit out of the box. So thank you guys so much for listening and for tuning in to the first 6 episodes, and now to your 7th episode. Kind of crazy to me that we've done this many so far, and that we're approaching 10, and I couldn't possibly do it without the support of all of you out there listening, and for your feedback, and for your ears, really. Just taking the time out of your day to listen to my story and to be a part of it and to engage with it is something that is amazing to me, and as I said, I'm very grateful for it. So I would only ask that you can continue to support me in the way that you have. Continue to listen on all streaming platforms, and continue to spread the word. If you really like what I'm talking about, and you like the message, and you think I can maybe entertain somebody else who's into podcasts, or help another player out, or whatever the case may be, I would definitely encourage you and ask you to share it with your friends, share it with your family, share it with colleagues, share it with other soccer players that you may know who could benefit from listening to a player like myself. So with that being said, if you guys have any questions or any comments, again, don't hesitate to reach out regarding the podcast. You can find me on my Instagram, shoot me a direct message, Brendan_Griffiths10. And you can also send an email to me. I have a specific email now for the podcast, and that is inthe11pod@gmail.com. As I said, that's inthe11pod@gmail.com. So that is the number 11 pod, pod, @gmail.com. So shoot me an email over there if you'd like to connect. And that about does it for today's episode. Once again, thank you so much for tuning in and for the support. I will catch you guys in 2 weeks. Peace.